Hello and welcome back to the Public Eye Business Podcast, brought to you by Granite Exchange. I'm your host, Sarah Travers, and throughout the series I'll be speaking with local entrepreneurs and business owners to learn more about how their companies have come to be, to gain insight into their growth, and find out how they continue to innovate. So wherever you get your podcasts from, remember to keep an eye out for all new episodes and subscribe to stay up to date. Well, today I am joined by Paolina Hawthorne, who's sitting across from me today in the podcast studio. And Paolina is Managing Director at Diversity NI Limited. You're really welcome into the podcast studio. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for having me. Absolutely fantastic today. Thank you.
Good. Well,
real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, we've a lot to talk about today because you have established quite a company. And as with all my guests, we're going to begin with a little bit of background just to set the scene. So Paolina, as I said, is the managing director of what is actually the largest interpreting and translation service in Northern Ireland. But Paolina began her career as a television presenter in her home country of Bulgaria before coming to Northern Ireland in 2007. Following her move, Paolina worked with local businesses and the public sector to provide interpretation and translation services. Now, during this time, she identified a need for a professional and dedicated interpreting service that could serve both the business community as well as reaching out to non-English speaking residents moving to and living in Northern Ireland. As a result, Paolina established Diversity NI in 2010, and the business specialises in offering professional interpreting and translation services and accredited training programmes too. Now, here are some figures that are incredible. The company currently works with a dedicated team of over 700 fully qualified interpreters from a variety of cultures and backgrounds, speaking 75 different languages across Northern Ireland, with 19 brand new Ukrainian interpreters as well. Paolina, whenever you actually listen to what you have achieved and when you look at those stats, I didn't even think, there were that many languages being spoken in Northern Ireland. But then the need, you've really established, you've really tapped into something that was missing.
I think it's very incredible when I hear those numbers. And we're talking about nationalities and languages that are currently across Northern Ireland. That's a very different place we're in today than what it was 15 years ago.
And let's just talk about whenever you moved from Bulgaria.
Yes.
So I want to ask you too. You were a TV presenter in Bulgaria.
Oh my God, can you imagine that? Can you imagine that?
So who did you work for and what did you do?
I was working for a broadcaster, BTV. And that was, that still is, a national television in Bulgaria. We were doing live TV, 45 minutes, one-man show, live TV. It was aired every night. We were 3 presenters, so we were taking a turn each. And I think during that time I realized 1 minute is a very long time to talk about things. The saving grace for me back then was that I just had a lot of fun and no social media to really, dig into, the things.
I hear you.
Especially as a young girl, that was, we had a team that were doing our hair, our makeup, styling, what are you wearing? And we had the fun and none of the difficulties.
The criticism and the judgment.
Yes.
Because I obviously
Absolutely.
did the same thing
Yeah.
here. But I didn't like it when social media started. Then it suddenly became very apparent that, there were people out there that brought you down, where you were having fun, and then suddenly this criticism and judgment, usually about appearance.
Yes, and you know what? I can understand. That's normal. I can understand people. People go and it's free. You just lash it out. That's fine. And I just remember. I know that's probably a little bit off topic, but I remember when Caroline Flack committed suicide, and I remember I really liked Caroline Flack. But I never took the time to go on. So I never felt the need to go on social media to tell her, actually, I really like you. I felt that, why would I do that? And But then you find out that there's plenty of people that find the need to go to tell what really don't like you. And that had such a bad effect on her, obviously. So I had all of the fun. I was a girl growing up with a very low self-confidence because I was always extremely skinny and extremely tall. And all of a sudden, we had a team around us that were telling us, you know what, it's fine, it's okay. And
So what was your background? How did you get into the TV world?
oh my God, what a question! Oh, question for $10 million. Absolutely by chance, by accident, like every fabulous thing that happens in my life. So at the time, I wanted to study in American university. And I was so highly motivated. I started studying English in my early 20s, and that was from 5 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night every day. I started from the basics, literally, and in 18 months I sat TOEFL and SATs, whatever, a TOEFL, to go to American university. And it started to become apparent that perhaps I'm not going to an American university, but I was coming back to my hometown. And I remember walking, I was living in Sofia at the time, coming back to my hometown, and getting off the bus, walking, getting my way to home. And I remember seeing a friend of mine and her brother-in-law. And we say hello to each other, and it was so good to see somebody like I can recognize, even though you're thinking I'm still in Bulgaria, in Sofia, but there you go. There was somebody that I could recognize. And her brother-in-law happened to be one of the producers. We met later on that day for a coffee. Yeah, a big part of the Bulgarian culture, going out for coffee. People here go out for a beer, we go out for coffee. Well, there you go. And he said, well, look, I'm very keen to invite you to an audition. Come and audition. We're having that new program coming and starting, and we're looking for 3 presenters, and you're very welcome to come. And I said, oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to an American university. He said, I don't think you understand what I really am, proposing. Come to an audition. And when it came apparent that I'm not going to American university, that was 13th of June. I phoned him because I needed a job, and I said, listen, that audition you're talking about, is that still on? And he said, well, actually, it's on the 4th of July. And I said, yeah, can I still come? Yeah, come on in. I went there, and Sarah, I just recognized every single face that I saw. I recognized it was a popular face, and I was just thinking I might as well go home. I phoned my sister, and she said, no, don't you dare coming home, you're staying there. So I ended up getting a job.
Wow.
So that's all happened.
So I love that, because it's a great story of how, you got to take those opportunities, and even though they terrify you and you think, I don't think I can do this,
yes,
you'll never know unless you try.
Absolutely.
And you don't know what opportunities lie there. Now, fast forward.
Yes.
Right. Why Northern Ireland?
Well, when I decided to come to Northern Ireland, my parents thought I was absolutely crazy, because they thought, you're settled here, you have a great career, why want to leave?
Why? I want to know.
And I could speak. The thing is, at that time, my English was pretty good, okay? So I knew my English was very good. And I wanted to travel, and I've never traveled. And what you have to understand, Bulgaria was part of European Union in 2007. Before that was fairly difficult for a young person to leave.
But this opened up borders
opportunities.
And opportunities.
And it took me really 6 months to get my act together, really. And I want to come to Northern Ireland. And why Northern Ireland is because I was interpreting together with other people for a company in Northern Ireland who was exploring properties in Bulgaria. And this is how I get to know somebody from here. And I could rent an apartment from them here. And that was incredible. That was the hardest thing for anyone coming to different countries. Where do you live? Where do you stay?
Where do you start? Where do you build a life? How do you...
So once I knew that I had an apartment to come to, I came first for 10 days in April. I remember it was April or May in 2007. So I was 24. I set up those different interviews. I got a job in a call center, and I went back home. I gave a month notice, and I thought that is possibly the best job that I could possibly dream for, because to me, that was a school of accents, speaking all day, not only speaking, selling. Oh my God, what an opportunity. And I'm thinking, I'm going to take that. I'm so excited about it.
What was the call centre?
LBM. LBM in, I think that was West Belfast, maybe. I'm not too sure.
And your
it was
primary
incredible.
goal, was it to improve your English further?
Absolutely.
And did you know that were you thinking about being an interpreter at that stage because you were doing a little bit of
Not
work?
just yet.
Okay.
Not just yet. Because at the time, Sarah, I didn't know. I mean, how naive. So I'm 24. I'm arriving to this country that I know so little about. I'm thinking of all the things happening were from the last century. So naive. I mean, the information I have is literally from Cranberries and the Zombie song, right?
That's it.
I mean, it's so naive.
So did
I
you
am
know
looking
anything about
back.
Northern Ireland?
Looking back, oh my God, how could I? And I mean,
Well, you don't
no,
know. You don't
I
know.
just
I wouldn't have known
came.
much about Bulgaria.
Well, I came here. I'm kind of thinking, yeah, there might be some disagreements in the community, you know. But exactly. But probably that was nice sorted. So I mean, I came with. I was very naive at
a
the
blank
time.
canvas.
Yes.
Is that maybe an opportunity as well?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know what? I think this served me really well through the years, and in my career as an interpreter, and in my career as a managing director of Diversity and I, is my ability to look into things impartially, and I think this is a very difficult thing to master. So I came my target was 4 sales a day. I was doing 10, and I thought, you know what, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And that was the first time where I thought, there is a hope. There is a hope for me, okay? I was on my own. I was very cautious and very aware of my safety, really, I didn't have any family and friends in here. If I was to disappear,
A young woman.
no one would know, yeah?
Did you feel nervous?
I wouldn't say nervous. I felt very aware of my surroundings, if I may say that.
How were
way.
you treated? How were you treated?
Brilliantly,
Right.
with kindness.
Were people
With kindness.
Because really
Yes.
we didn't have very many
The
people
thing
coming
is,
to Northern Ireland at
the-
that stage.
Yeah, the thing is, Sarah, I think in every country, doesn't matter where you are, you come across good people and you come across not so good people, and this is very normal. This is extremely normal, and I think it's a responsibility of it. I felt at the time that it was my responsibility to take the good and to keep the good in me, and to keep and to be grateful for every little kindness that I met and I came across along the way, because that is what built me. I didn't want to be angry. I didn't want to be nervous. I didn't want to be. That was a choice that I really, really wanted to make for myself, because this is what, I mean, I came home on my own. I got up in the morning, went to work on my own. There is, do you know what
Nobody.
I mean? Yeah. So at the time, I didn't know something that was very important. Bulgarian Romanians at the time come in Northern Ireland, could stay in Northern Ireland, but we weren't allowed to work in Northern Ireland.
Oh my goodness.
So it took me 3 months. So for every job, it was just one of those ridiculous things that the employer goes to home office and tell them, oh, we have that Bulgarian lady, can we please employ her? And the home office say, no, sorry, you can't. So every 3 months I was literally with a new job going. So as soon as I start a new job, go and look for another one. That was a roller coaster. I mean, who lives like that?
I had no idea.
So, no,
So you were
thank God that's not like that anymore.
No, but at the time, I can remember at
Yes.
that period, and
Yes.
there were new cultures coming in, and you were aware of different people arriving from different countries. But I thought they were all welcomed into the economy. No.
Well, not necessarily. It wasn't as straightforward as that.
Okay.
And I mean, again, 24, how naive. I'll put it down to that. I wouldn't be harsher on myself at the time.
So what happened then?
Well,
what inspired you?
then I find out that the only way I can stay and work legally here is as self-employed. Now, obviously, time has passed, circumstances has changed. things has changed in terms of, I was self-employed, then I started a course, then I sorted out my documents, and that was very, very important step of the process. And that's where I had to be an interpreter. I had to gain the qualification, and I had to be self-employed interpreter.
So where do you get your qualification then?
Well,
At that
this is where I found inspiration for Diversity and I, because access to that type of qualification was not straightforward. It was like that secret sort of society where you ask other interpreters, how can I become an interpreter? And they say, oh, I can't really tell.
Not enough business.
Not enough business for anybody. Or maybe, yeah, exactly. And I was just thinking, this is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I know that there are not many Bulgarians, but I'm sure I can do something good for the community. And I found out later on, again, I went on a training, I got registered, I was working successfully. And so we are now talking, when I started Diversity 2010, what I really wanted to do is to get level 6 diploma in public service interpreting. And this was the qualification, the number one qualification that could set me apart from other translators and interpreters. So we are talking about a register at the time, Sarah, when I started, of about probably 150 people. All of them, a vast majority, I'd say good 90% at level 3. And for specific jobs like trials, for example.
Yes, give us an example of
there were
the
people
types
had to.
of jobs.
I mean, the people had to travel from mainland UK to come and job for those jobs, and I thought that's absolutely ridiculous. Why can't we have people that are qualified in Northern Ireland have opportunity to excel themselves, have opportunity not just to work for local organization, but to wear that hat of, being a professional member of a professional organization, and widen their horizons of the type of clients really that they can work with. I mean, to me, that was so obvious. So incredible. I reached out to the Charter of Linguists at the time. And we've built that brilliant relationship with them. And you know what? Just before I came here to see you today, I had that conversation with John, their chief exec, and we are putting that great, training together, free of charge for interpreters, just to show them, okay, this is the pathway, these are the opportunities where you can go, these are the different hats you can wear. It's not only public service interpreting, it's not only private sector interpreter. There is other things out there that are equally as fascinating and can earn so much more money as well.
This podcast is sponsored by Granite Legal Services, a niche business and immigration law practice located in the heart of Newry City. Granite Legal Services provides legal advice to both individuals and companies alike across a wide range of industries, from employment, commercial or corporate law matters to immigration law. Granite Legal Services focuses on providing legally sound, practical advice to its clients. To get in touch, visit www.granitelegalservices.co.uk or contact 028 3026 2200. 75 different languages.
Tell us
some of the languages.
So the newest, do you know what? It is always really incredibly, I don't know what way to take it, but sometimes we have some requests for languages that everyone in the company sometimes thinks, well, I've never heard about that language before. And this is, I kind of hold that expectation of me that I have to know every single language under the sun. And sometimes I have to be honest, you know, nobody's perfect. But this year we had Nuer language. Okay, so I didn't know about Nuer, I'll be honest with your audience.
Did you not? No, I didn't. I know that really well.
So Nuer language is spoken in South Sudan. Nuer. And that was, I mean, we find the Nuer speakers, and we are holding tight, and we are, qualifying them and all the rest of it. And this is when I do that, this is giving me an incredible buzz into me.
So
I'll give you another example.
Okay,
Sorry,
yes,
can I give you another
yes.
example? I remember a couple of years back, before the pandemic, definitely. I remember the Marine and Coast Guard Agency contacted us out of the blue and say, we have this recording that is in Danish language. No one wants to do it. 11 companies said no to us. Would you be able to do it? It took me 3 months. I was like a dog with a bone. And I was like, listen, if you give me that, I'll get it. This is now the job of my life. I wasn't even making that much money out of it. But it doesn't matter. It just excited me. And I just thought, do you know what? If you have a challenge, I will solve it. That's my thing. I love it.
And how do you find the people when you've got a request and
Well,
it is
that's
really
the
difficult?
thing.
So where do you go for Nuer? How did you find?
Well, I talk to people. I know how does that sound? I talk to people.
But they're not necessarily living and working in Northern Ireland.
They are. Can you
are.
imagine that they knew? I mean, I was thinking, I'm going to find that Nuer speaker, even if I have to go to South Sudan. And I find them in Belfast.
It's fascinating.
Yes, but isn't it incredible that interpreting as a career gives you that rare opportunity to tap into so many different aspects of people's lives? I find that fascinating.
So what does it take to be a good interpreter? I can speak English.
Yes.
If I was to go somewhere else and translate, obviously I have to have the other language too, but what makes me, how would I be a good interpreter?
Number one, have a really good people skills. When an interpreter goes to a job, you can imagine that if I am a foreign national, which I am, come to Northern Ireland, I go and register with the GP, I go and register with the home office, yes, I go and register with my national insurance number, I go and get my bank account. But if I don't speak English and I have an interpreter, and if I'm an interpreter, I will get to know what their names are, where do they live, how do they have any children, how many children they have, what school those children go to, what car do they drive, is that car insured, not insured, do they have driving license, do they have a bank account, which bank they're banking with, their PIN number. Yeah, it's a lot of information. So number one, confidentiality, not sharing any information. I mean, there's so much in place. Interpreters signing their lives away, making sure that they're aware of the confidentiality aspect of it. I mean, the number one thing there's everything number one, but there's so many important things that for us as a managing company are looking out for. For example, identity fraud. I mean, that's a big thing. Right. You get to know so much information. We shout out a lot about that. It's a very important aspect of the training. And people need to know that all that information, they cannot hold any of that information. Because all those organizations not necessarily will talk between themselves, but the interpreter can come across.
So it's whether you're working for the organization, but at the end of it, you've got a human being that's involved, and lots of vulnerable human beings. Where you do a lot of work in that area. So Ukrainian refugees, you've had Syrian refugees.
Yes.
How complex has that been?
I mean, that has been that has been fairly complex. The organizations that were involved in that were running an absolute military operation. It really was. Interpreters were fantastic, absolutely incredible. And it took a lot it took a lot into the training. The training was essential, absolutely essential, just because you're placing those people, dealing with other people's emotions and then having to deal with their own emotions.
So talk me through how it's working at the minute. You've actually got 19 brand new Ukrainian interpreters.
Yes.
Did you find them in Northern Ireland?
Yes.
And then maybe how did they go and how do they help? And obviously they're from the country that they see with this awful tragedy is unfolding.
yeah, what a difficult situation for them to be in.
But maybe they weren't, this was something they were finding themselves going into,
Yeah,
interpreting.
absolutely. Yes.
So how does that work?
What happened was we were coming from a very solid experience, 5 years, more, 2015, experience with the Syrian refugee crisis. So we've gained quite a lot of knowledge in that. We know how to run it. We know what part of the training that needs to get in. We know, I mean, those are solid things you go through and learn, sometimes the hard way, sometimes the better way. But it's nevertheless, it's a good learning. So I knew that I wanted to help in some way the community, and the straightforward thing is, yes, you give money, Red Cross or organizations that are sending aid there, and you do that. But I wanted to do a help to offer help that will be more relevant to my industry and relevant to what we are doing. And we invested £7,500 in training those people that are from Ukraine. They are speaking Ukrainian language. They understand the background, the sensitivities around different issues. And it was, it has been absolutely so rewarding, fascinating, incredible for me to meet those people face to face, to talk to them, to offer them the training, how to be good interpreters, what will make you a professional interpreter, what are the troubleshooting, what issues you're going to come across, and that's perfectly normal. What can you do to help it? No one is born knowing all the words at all time. Everybody will have a little stumble. How do you manage those situations? Nobody is born, not coming across difficult situations. How do you manage that? What do you do? So that was very, very empowering for them. And I think that give them, because that qualification is something that they're going to hold and they can keep for themselves. It's empowering them to help their community.
So it wasn't necessarily it wasn't a business initiative for you. This was you knowing that this investment needed to be made, and for Ukrainian people, the value of having somebody from their own country who actually could speak their language.
And that is one of the things that I always try and think of, is because I want to wear the T-shirt for myself to say, do you know what, I've done something good today that is not motivated by money, and it's not. This is one of the reasons why I'll go into charitable events. I'll do something, but I prefer to do something than rather just give money. I prefer to go in and spend the time
and use those skills. And
yes,
you obviously have a very unique set of skills as well. That
all of a sudden, it just kind of came handy.
Well, look at what you've achieved with Diversity NI over the past 12 years. Do you pinch yourself at times at what you've built?
Well, do you know what? Sometimes I read those articles, and do you know what? I don't even have them. Everybody says you have to have them on on the wall, put them in a frame, and I haven't done that because I kind of feel like, well, I'm sort of been in the right place and right time. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of
you've been in the right place at the right time,
me.
But you've taken a risk. You've taken the leap.
It is taking a risk.
So it's even appreciating that you have done that. You could have been in the right place at the right time and thought, way too much work.
Well, can I tell you, it is way too much work.
Okay.
It is way too much work, but what keeps me going, I love it. I love to know. So one of the things that absolutely get me going so much is a super rare language like Lovari Roma. Who heard of Lovari Roma?
Nobody.
Right? Nobody. And I am getting up in the morning and going to bed thinking, I am going to find a Lovari Roma language. And guess what? It happens that I do. I remember number of years ago, we had no Spanish interpreter. Can you imagine? I had 4 languages. Spanish, the most obvious one. Spanish, French, German, right? It didn't have. And then we had a client who came and said, we want 15 or 12 Spanish interpreters. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Didn't sleep. We had a training starting at the time. And I'm talking back probably 2020. I don't want to get the wrong year. It's quite a few years back. And on that training, I am not joking you, we had half of it was only Spanish
Oh my
interpreters.
goodness. Why does the universe do
Wasn't that lucky?
I find that too.
I
It's like
love
the
it.
universe provides.
Yes, it really does.
When you're looking, you
It
see, you weren't
really does.
looking before.
I was like, can't believe it. Thank you.
You've just brought to me. Thank you for this
Yes,
gift. That was
but
easy.
it was amazing, and things sort of worked out for me.
Isn't that the secret?
In
Ask,
a
believe,
way,
and you shall
I don't
receive.
know. Yes, well, I don't know about that. I'm more like on the practical side, get up and going. Show up. I mean, my granny. I remember my granny always. She wasn't a highly educated lady, but one thing she left with me, and my father used to be really big into that, is show up, get up, dress up, show up, keep going. Is it tough? It's tough. It's not. Who told you it's going to be easy? Yeah. Keep going.
There's nothing easy. That's the thing.
Exactly.
And you are keeping going. What is a typical day in a life like for you at the minute?
Well, a typical day at the minute.
Because you have 2 kiddies as well.
I have 2 children who keeps me on my toes. And do you know what? It is... I can answer that pretty practically, what a typical day is. I can say, do you know what, post-COVID, it's not what it used to be, yes. But I am a big fan since COVID. I only started running, actually, during COVID. Yes, I couldn't run of the length of myself. Couldn't run for a minute, never mind 5K, right?
And you're doing it.
So I'm doing it. And I thought, you know what? I'm taking that very seriously. I'm contacting a beautiful lady called Kelly Neely, who is an Irish champion in running. I'm thinking, what the heck? I'm going to go the whole way. I'm training with her. I said that to a friend of mine a couple of weeks back, and she said, Paolina, you are crazy. Everybody can run. You have legs. Just move. You don't need a coach for that.
Champion.
Exactly. And I just thought, no, I do. So I go to this incredible lady, and she it's hard. It's tough. Yeah. But do you know what? It is. I have one of those. I always set myself little goals for each year. And back 6 years ago, 9 years ago, I couldn't swim. And I thought, I can't go through life without swimming. I couldn't swim front crawl. I could sort of swim a little bit in the water, but I couldn't. I'm not a strong swimmer. So I thought, I'm going to have to learn how to swim. And I did.
Did you?
Yes, 6 weeks. That's done.
6 weeks, and you could swim. Done. And do you swim a lot now?
I would go swimming now, yes.
And with the children and everything, that's great.
And what an incredible
So you set yourself a challenge, and you thought, I can't do this, but that doesn't mean I can never do this. I'm going to learn. Exactly. So the running, how's the running going?
Fabulous.
Do you do it? Are you just running all the... It's good for the mentally and physically. See, I ran a tiny bit. I find it hard, though.
So here is the thing. I am listening to a podcast with Kelly Neely, and she goes through all those figures. Oh, my 400 meters is whatever seconds, and my 1,500 meters is whatever. I go and run with her and say, Kelly, how do you remember all those numbers? I mean, so many numbers, like 20 minutes of the podcast, like numbers. How do you even remember that? I said, oh, Polly, believe me, when you start running those, you will remember your personal best. And you know what? I do.
So what are we sitting at now for your 5K?
Do you know what? The 5K, before going to 5K, let's talk about 400 meters. 400 meters are strong. 400 meters today, I run my 400 meters. My top speed is 17.5 kilometers an hour. I mean, I have to tell you that's impressive. Even if I say so myself. Sorry. Apologies if I come across not so modest.
Well, I would totally pick that up.
But for someone who couldn't run, I mean, I'm thinking I couldn't run at all. And I'm running that now.
So do you break it up? You don't just go for the big distance?
So you have a different type of running. So you have that interval
running. We've gone
running.
completely off piece now.
Oh, sorry.
It's fine. I'm fascinated.
Right, you have that, then you have your 5K, then you have your long, easy runs. So if you manage to do that 3 times a week, you're sorted. Yes, you're sorted.
Well, you're doing brilliantly. So I did ask you for your day in your life, so it's totally taken up with running.
Yes,
starts
with running. Go to the office, get onto the emails, sort things out. I just take everything off the list, respond to every query. If someone is waiting, I hate when I go and wait on people to come back to me, and can I apologize if that ever happened to any of my clients? I do try my best.
So you respond to every query?
I have to. I mean, well, obviously,
straight away.
We have a team. Okay, we have a team, so they're being channeled. Okay, we have the booking team, we have the account team, we have me. So I will be the one that will be dealing with clients in terms of if there's new clients, or I will be dealing with training for interpreters, I'll be dealing with, I wear different hats.
Right, well, what's the biggest challenge been?
Biggest challenge. Biggest challenge, do you know what? For me, the biggest challenge is to maintain in a good place and to look forward and to see what's next. Okay, what's next? Because very soon, I think you can take your eye off the ball. Yeah. So for me, the biggest challenge is number one, maintain that good place, stay in the good place. What are the things that make me stay? What are the practical things that make me stay in that good place where I am productive and I
You
do
have
my
a
job?
purpose and
Yes,
it's working.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I have that list, and I make sure all those things from my essential list are scheduled in my diary, and that's challenging because life does happen, things happen, and the thing is, it's normal. That's normal. It's normal to have setbacks. It's normal to have difficulties. That's fine. How we manage them, and the challenge is to think, okay, well then what's next? And I have something very incredibly fascinating coming in September. But I am so scared to say more in case I let myself down and I actually don't I'm not ready for September. But it's in the making. It's nearly there. It's absolutely, honestly, Sarah,
And we
it gets
can't
me
persuade
so
you.
excited.
You don't want to say it out loud.
I just want to do it. I want to do it, and when it's done, I want to talk about it.
So you'll have to come back and do part 2
Yeah,
then.
I know. And how exciting is that?
Well, it sounds incredibly exciting, but it is that sort of, I'm going to jinx myself if I say anything.
Yes,
so I'll
I
just
know.
not.
Do you know what? It gets my... honestly.
Is
it's
it another
so
risk involved?
It's always a risk.
Because you love risk.
It's
don't
always
you?
a risk. Yeah,
and
well,
that's
have
a
to.
great learning for everybody listening to this today.
Well, I always said, you know what? Business is heat. Okay, you get the heat. And I always thought to myself, do you know what? If you can't take the heat, don't go into the kitchen. And you know what? Not everyone can take the heat.
That's true.
And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Don't go into the kitchen. But if you're in the kitchen and I'm thinking, okay, if I want to make an omelette, you're gonna have to break few eggs to make an omelette, right? And tough decisions have to be made. And sometimes those tough decisions are not necessarily the right decisions, yeah? But sometimes, you know what? I always think, make a decision. Even if it's a wrong decision, make a decision. And then reflect, move on, make a better decision next time. But to me, that has always been I find that very inspiring when I struggle. If I get to look into only one thing and then I think, that's it, if I get darker thoughts or no, go back to the good place. So maintaining that is challenging.
But really important. Now, I ask everybody this question. You've already given fabulous advice to anybody who's starting up a business or who has an existing business and they want to grow it. But I always ask, what advice would you give to people who may have a business idea but have no idea where to begin or are unsure as to whether the risk is worth taking?
So what I can only suggest that based on my personal experience. So take it or leave it. If it doesn't work for you, throw it out with the bin, as my favorite mentor, Professor Steve Peters, would say. Find inspiration in the cheap management. Never mind. I'm not gonna.
Throw
So
it out.
I know if it doesn't work, yeah. But I'll tell you what I've done. Okay. So, what advice I can give is number one. Start very small with one step at a time. Sometimes I see people who want to wake up to a multi-million point company and have those grand ideas. And I'm just thinking, do you know what? Start crawling before walking, yeah? So start just with something very simple. Don't chuck your day job just yet. Start with something simple and find one customer. Sometimes sometimes I find myself as well, and I can only speak from experience, sometimes think, this is my problem. My problem is, where is my office going to be? No, Paolina, this is not your problem. Your problem is, who's your customer, who's fitting the bill, who's your supplier, who's delivering the service. So cut that noise around and identify the actual, what is the actual issue, and do it small. Do it just one. Can you get one customer? Can you sell one thing? Can you get another one? Can you say one more? And build gradually. When I started, I did the first website myself. It looks hideous. My first business cards, absolutely hideous. I mean, it took me probably 10 years in the making for me to actually come up with a more professional logo. But I didn't have the money for it. I didn't go and splash on a, BMW to say, oh, I'm that incredible business person. I was driving my Nissan Micra or whatever it was at the time. But what I'm trying to say is, before I came here, I had a conversation with my sister. And the biggest issue, the biggest concern my sister had at the time, there were many, but the one that came across to me was, oh my gosh, Polly, how are you going to get through the airport? I looked at her thinking, that's a list of my worries. What am I going to do with my job? This is the biggest thing. So be very careful to prioritize what is the actual problem. Right. Solve it. Yeah, move on. Start small.
Start small.
Start very small.
Identify the problem, the right problem.
And keep
solve
going.
It. Keep going.
And think, I'm here to stay. And I'm here to stay for a long time. So even if I get a knockback, I'll get up and go. I don't count the times that I won contracts. I learn from the times I lost contracts, because this is where the backbone lies and your muscles grow. Because the more you lose and you're reflecting, I remember I lost one contract back in 2015. How many people call me to say, are you going to close diversity? I'm not closing diversity. We keep going, because that's what being resilient is. Who said it's going to be easy?
Paolina, I'm not going to ask or say another word. What a brilliant ending there for the Public Eye podcast today. It has been a joy talking to you, and
thank you so
to
much.
Hear about all that you've established. And as we become more multicultural and as businesses expand in Northern Ireland, I'm sure there will be an even greater need for all sorts of incredible languages that we haven't even heard of yet in Northern Ireland. Thank you for sharing your incredible journey with all the Public Eye listeners, and I'll see you next time. This podcast was recorded in Granite Podcast Studio. Interested in starting up your own podcast but don't know how? Granite Podcast Studio can help. Record your podcast in our state-of-the-art studio, which is based in the heart of Newry City. Our studio has cutting-edge and user-friendly technology and can seat up to 4 people. We also provide an editing service, where our team using your guidance and editing notes to provide you with a flawless finished product, leaving your listeners wanting more. For more information on how you can get started, visit www.granitepodcaststudio.com.